The Potomac River lay still beneath the winter night, its dark surface broken only by the reflection of Washington, D.C.'s lights. From the Kennedy Center to the Washington Monument, the city seemed at peace. In the control tower at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, radar screens glowed with green arcs and shifting dots, each one a story in motion. It was the kind of night pilots liked, clear enough for visual flight, air calm, and traffic steady. But for all its beauty, DC's airspace was one of the most complex and unforgiving in the world. Civilian jets, military helicopters, and medevac flights all threaded the same narrow corridors of sky. And tonight, two of those aircraft, one filled with civilians bound for the capital, the other carrying soldiers home from training, were about to converge over the Potomac in a way no one could stop in time. American Eagle Flight 5342, a Bombardier CRJ-700, half lifted off from Wichita just before sunset. Inside, 64 passengers, business travelers, families, even a group of figure skaters headed for a competition, settled into their seats. The crew of three worked in rhythm. Captain monitoring instruments, first officer handling radio calls, flight attendant moving through the cabin. Elsewhere, at Davison Army Airfield, a UH-60L Black Hawk helicopter spun up its twin General Electric engines. On board were three soldiers from the Army's 12th Aviation Battalion, returning from a night vision goggle evaluation. To them, this was a familiar route, along the Potomac River, hugging the contours of restricted airspace, descending toward Fort Belvoir. Neither crew had reason to believe this would be anything but routine. The CRJ-700 lined up for runway 33 at Reagan National, descending through 3,000 feet. Its passengers gazed at the twinkling lights of Georgetown and the Lincoln Memorial. The Black Hawk, flying low along the river's western bank, approached from the south. Air traffic control saw both aircraft. The controller cleared Flight 5342 for final approach and instructed the Black Hawk to maintain visual separation. In aviation, visual separation meant the helicopter crew was responsible for avoiding the jet, provided they could see it clearly. In the darkness over the river, the distance between them was shrinking. The tower's calm voice echoed through the Black Hawk's cockpit.
Army Copter 219er, traffic is a regional jet inbound runway 33, half a mile right to left.
The helicopter pilot responded. Roger, we have them in sight. Flight 5342's crew heard their own clearance to continue descent. To them, this was another standard approach, nothing unusual. But the tower's decision to let the Black Hawk maintain visual separation placed the burden of safety in the helicopter's hands. The stage was set for one fatal misunderstanding. The Black Hawk crew adjusted their path, believing they would pass behind the jet. Inside the cockpit, night vision goggles cast the world in green, distorting depth and distance. The jet's lights shimmered against the dark river, harder to judge than in daylight. The CRJ's pilots, eyes forward, trusted the tower's instructions. Airspeed steady, flaps deployed, cabin crew securing the galley. In less than 2 minutes, they would be over the threshold. But in those same 2 minutes, their paths would fatally intersect. A slight haze rolled in over the river, not enough to be classified as fog, but just enough to blur shapes and swallow details. In the Black Hawk cockpit, one crew member leaned forward, thoughtful. Passing behind? The pilot nodded, keeping the jet's lights in sight. On the CRJ's traffic collision avoidance system, a yellow warning appeared. Traffic. Traffic. It was a warning no one would have enough time to fully act on. At 8:47 p.m., the two aircraft met in a violent mid-air collision. The Black Hawk's main rotor struck the CRJ's right fuselage and tail. The sound, metal tearing, engines screaming, was deafening. In seconds, the CRJ pitched, rolled, and broke apart. The Black Hawk's rotor blades shattered. The helicopter began an uncontrollable spin toward the river. Lights flashed across the water. Pieces of fuselage rained down. And then, silence, replaced only by the distant wail of sirens. Witnesses along the river saw a ball of flame erupt mid-air. Some thought it was fireworks at first, but the fire streaked downward, trailing debris that splashed into the icy Potomac. The temperature was below freezing. In the water, survival time was measured in minutes, but there would be no survivors. First responders raced to the scene. Coast Guard boats, DC fire and EMS units, police helicopters. They fought ice and darkness, hoping for signs of life. Searchlights scanned the water. Divers entered the freezing current. But every retrieval was of debris and bodies. For those on shore, it became painfully clear. This was no rescue. It was recovery. Cranes lifted twisted metal from the water. Wreckage dripped river water onto barges. Pieces of the CRJ's fuselage, a shattered rotor blade, personal belongings, each tagged and photographed for investigators.
Can we get some of that
The
data from the
NTSB
blade?
arrived before dawn, joined by military crash teams. By sunrise, the Potomac looked like a salvage yard. Black boxes were pulled from the river, data recorders that would replay the last seconds of both flights. Early readouts confirmed altitude anomalies and delayed avoidance maneuvers. The question was why, and the answers would point to both human error and systemic flaws. The victims' names told the story of a cross-section of America. Young athletes, corporate travelers, parents, children, and soldiers. Candlelight vigils sprang up in Wichita, D.C., and army bases across the country. Families clung to photos, medals, skating costumes, anything left untouched by the fire and water. The FAA reviewed its helicopter routing protocols near D.C. The Army examined its night flight training procedures. Lawmakers questioned why ADS-B transmitters, which broadcast an aircraft's position, weren't mandated for all military flights in civilian corridors. Changes came quickly. Restricted zones widened, routes modified, and ADS-B rules expanded. Grieving families demanded to know why a military helicopter was cleared into a civilian approach path on a busy evening. Congressional hearings broadcast tense exchanges between regulators, military officers, and safety experts. Each answer seemed to raise more questions. Flight 5342's number was retired. The Army placed memorial plaques at Davison Airfield. Figure skating teams dedicated their season to lost teammates. The Potomac flowed on, cold, silent, and indifferent. A living memorial to a night when two aircraft crossed paths in the worst possible way.